background in Russian studies and with Russian language. If Judy had been, maybe had decided the priority first, if it had been her turn first to decide where we would go, we might be in a Spanish-speaking country. So among the pictures that we wanted to bring briefly this evening, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Judy for the first 3 pictures or so.
So we've been back in the States since April, and we've been trying to adjust back in the States. What doesn't get into the news very often is what you've seen on the film, how just the generosity of Russians and how much they're kind of over the top. Oh, it's just, yeah, that's right. Elizabeth Todd lived in Uzbekistan for a while, and she calls them depressed Italians, which I think very accurate. But I lived in Spain as a teenager, and so I would have gone a little farther south. So since I've been back, I was able to go to interpret on a medical mission in Bolivia. So that's where my first picture is, if you have. One of the things that was really exciting to me and deeply touching was that I was, we had medical clinics that were free to the community that set up in the Friends churches in the lowlands of Bolivia. So, so the ones in, so most of that picture, that's the picture of our team, but many of those are the young adults in the Santa Cruz Friends Church, and they competed to get in on to help us, and they were amazing. Some of them were medical professionals themselves. And can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Yes, I forget to eat it. So it just, in all the poverty and the medical neediness and all of that, that really stood out, how strong the Friends churches were there. And how helpful it had been to the young adults. So I would sit there every morning and thank the missionaries who had gone to Bolivia. The next one, this was organized by a pediatrician at West Hills. So they were, the second place we went to was in a largely indigenous town, and that was what just wrenched my heart out. We were mostly doing the best, what we did best, I think, the best work we did was about parasite control, things like that, vision from sun damage. But one of the doctors said to another, so which patient kept you up last night, just thinking about it? And I was a floater. They sort of sent me wherever, so I got to see a lot of the places. And so every morning I started with intake, and they said to me, so I asked the people who were first in line, when did you get here? And they said 2:30 a.m. They'd been waiting out there by the side of the church since 2:30 in the morning. And our perception was, we're doing so little of what we could do if we were set up. It just tore my heart to pieces. So I'm still sort of recovering from that. The other difficulty, of course, I had was I had this triple culture shock of Russia, the U.S., Bolivia. And then I think there's one more picture. So one of the things I did was hand out eyeglasses. So some of the women, some of the older people would come up and say, I just want to read the Bible again. And the next one, so that was only 10 days, including 2 days of R&R in Colombia, which was a blast.
Okay, now you're seeing some of the characters from our video and some of our other friends there. My oldest friend, by the way, who is in charge of signaling to us when we're about 3 minutes left? Who will do that for us? Okay, great. Because we can go on for quite a while, and you have some others whom you really need to hear from. These, it's hard to look at these pictures without getting a lump in my throat. But the guy far in the back with his arms up, clearly older than the students, is my oldest friend in Russia. And I'm a guy named Gennady, whose English is super. And you know what he did his PhD dissertation on? Inaugural speeches of American presidents. So, yeah, there he is. There he is. And you saw the guy to your left from him was one of the guys in the video, and Nikita. And the dramatic guy in front, the ham.
He was our one Protestant student. There he is. Yeah, that's right. So we would run into him on the street and go into Burger King, and it was great. He would ask me a question, and we'd have Bible study right there in Burger King. Because the other students had no concept of what Bible study was. And so a lot of it was bringing them into our house, talking to them, and then if we were lucky, they would ask a question. And sometimes they would leave and then ask me a question on like Facebook Messenger, or wait until everybody had gone and there was nobody else in the kitchen, and then they asked me, so what is this Trinity thing? How can God have three faces? And we had 2 active Orthodox believers the whole time we were there. The rest were, most of the rest would say they were Orthodox. That meant that they were patriotic and they were Russian, and so they were Orthodox. They would say, why should I go to church? It's like they'll just tell me what I'm doing wrong.
The next picture, we're up to D or E now, right? This is a really magical moment, and we really need to thank the yearly meeting for this, for promoting and advertising our learning tour, in which we had 3 people from the yearly meeting come and allow us to run them around European Russia for 10 days. They had 3 days in Moscow and 3 days in St. Petersburg, and all of the rest of the time was in the magic city of Elektrostal, which is not on any tourist map in the world. It is the most untouristy city you could imagine, full of industries and real people. And they stayed at the home of one of our students. The one you saw flipping his glasses?
Yes, there he is.
Yeah, there he is in a blue shirt.
I'm sure you can recognize Jesse Davis from the back.
Jesse Davis from Medford Friends was one of our guests, and he was one of the participants in the tour. And he started teaching them games, and they stayed when he and the other 2 visitors, and we stayed in our own apartment, but they stayed with him, and they stayed up till 2 or 3 o'clock every night playing the games that Jesse was teaching them. And when he had a chance to tell them what his job was.
I was afraid to tell them that he was a pastor, as I thought. So we lead them in, and one of the students says, so they're about to spend the night, and it's okay, so what do you do? And he says, I'm a pastor. And she just goes, she just froze. But Jesse did really good work for the kingdom. I was amazed. I would have thought it wasn't possible in 2 or 3 days, but they knew he was Protestant, they knew he was active, and he was able, and he stayed up till 2 and 3 a.m. talking to them, giving them confidence, talking about their lives. It was really good. It really had a deep impact. But I am glad I didn't tell him he was a pastor beforehand. So being a Protestant is actually kind of you're a discriminated minority in Russia. there are Russian Baptists, but there for all the way through Russia, there are Russian Baptists who are native Russians, but they are discriminated against. So even my hospitality ministry there was of suspect legality. So.
The last full year we were there, a law came into effect saying that Bible studies and worship services could not take place in private homes without authorization. And we had no authorizing body to get authorization from. So we weren't just worried about disgruntled students, we were worried about students who enjoyed being in our kitchen and would go home and tell their skeptical grandparents who would know then what to do, because old habits die hard. So we realized that the consequences for that kind of thing would not fall heavily on us. We might just be deported. The consequences would be felt most strongly by the people who liked us and supported us. So we need to keep up a friend's witness there after our time, but it may not be the same shape that we enjoyed for the 10 years of our involvement because of that increased political repression and especially the suspicion of anything that is not patriotic in the nationalist sense, namely Russian Orthodox and not representing the rotting West. It's such an irony for me. I was a Soviet studies scholar, and during my study of the Soviet Union, the country prided itself on its official atheist status. And of course, believers in Russia looked to the West as a place where religion could flourish, faith could flourish. Now, people are being told that Russia is the last true bastion of Christianity, and the West is rotting from the inside out, and so therefore anyone who really values Christian faith looks to Russia as what they sometimes call the Third Rome.
So I was raised with godless communists, and so in Russia then it became the godless West, which...
This is our kitchen. Oh, yes. Okay. I just want to make sure that you all know this is the kitchen. Some of you are supporters of Friends Women who supported the budget that allowed us to have high-quality evenings with students in our kitchen. And so we owe you a big thank you. Not only did you help us buy food, but also the food processor that saved Judy's hands. And a couple of pictures a little further along. The one that was up there originally, the first one that was up there that showed two computer screens, that was part of the work that we're continuing to do even while we're here. Translating Christian literature into Russian, especially Friends literature, where I don't do the raw translations, but I correct them to reflect accurate Russian for the 17th century English and the theological English that the original translators don't have a clue about. So I'm going to be continuing to do that for as long as God lets me. There's the picture. On the left side is the Russian translation. In the middle are my comments. And on the right side is the English Barclay and Brief, in this case, that we're working from. And we have so many examples of words that just don't translate into modern Russian, where I had to help them. And I used a King James English dictionary and a Shakespeare dictionary to help me work out how to translate these things into Russian.
We had kind of a dual mission field, which is that we had Friends House Moscow that was sponsoring this, the website, that was beginning to be really successful in that people started to find Moscow Friends because of the website, because we couldn't put a sign out front, anything like that. But it was founded by unprogrammed British friends who were not Christian, and so we had to thread that needle, and that was good work too.
One of the things that happened that confirmed sort of it was time for us to leave was also concerned the Russian Quaker network. Do you remember hearing about Fancy Bear, which is a nickname for the hackers group that hacked into the hacked into the political parties of the United States before the 2016 elections? That's the nickname for that hackers group that broke into the emails and did rather other forms of mischief as well. Well, I was called by a reporter from the Associated Press who said, "Are you aware that your email is on their target list?" And he told me what to look for in my email to see whether they were trying to break into our servers. And a lot of prominent evangelicals, and I'm not saying I'm prominent, but I didn't ask to be on that list either. A lot of prominent evangelicals and Orthodox dissidents were on that list, as we found out. And we realized that our activities were being scrutinized. And I had been on a Russian language Christian television show, talk show 4 times. And I began to wonder what kind of shadow might I be casting on our friends in Elektrostal, which is a much more top-down city than Moscow. Moscow is a zoo. Elektrostal is pretty specific. So we knew it was time for us to continue our activities here, encourage you all to keep some attention on this incredible place where friends' testimonies, and especially a testimony to the relationship with Jesus, is still incredibly important. But it was time for us to regroup out this side of the ocean and help you figure out what shape that will take next.
I just wanted to mention the tragedies of the 20th century in Russia. The revolution, the Civil War, the terrible droughts and agricultural failures, World War I, World War II. It just keeps going. Then the fall of the Soviet Union and the chaos afterwards, where during the 90s, the life expectancy of men, what do you think the life expectancy of men was in the 90s in Russia? Any guesses? 56. Yeah, it went all the way up to 59, and it made big news. So all of that in a very secular society. So that's where my heart was, to bring healing and healing relationships and a spiritual depth to people's lives, so they knew they could move toward hope, toward Jesus.
Thank you so much. So much more you guys could share. So we have fellowship time afterwards. If you have questions, make sure you come up to them. Well, I just want to introduce Marilyn Nevo. I feel like Marilyn and I are kind of sisters in that we just have some things in common. When she first came here, and she was interested in the garden that I was interested in, and she's a nurse, and so am I. So we had gotten to be good friends in the short time she was here. Most recently, she came back from working on the Mercy ships and was there for, did you say 7 months? Yeah, 7 months. Yeah, this term. Anyway, I just want to introduce Marilyn and welcome back. We're so happy to have you here. Wish you could be here a little bit longer.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to start off with 3-minute, I think it is, video. It's a promotional video that Mercy Ships has prepared, so it goes at the speed of advertising. So you have to pay close attention, and you'll miss some things, but I'm going to end with another video that covers some of the same things, and then in between maybe you can digest some of it, and it'll maybe record better on the downside. But they can say so much more than I can say quickly. So if you would do video 1, please. No, that's the wrong one. Do video 1, please.
Mercy Ships is a unique organisation because it is bringing services to countries that would otherwise never be able to access those services. It gives us the flexibility to bring first world healthcare to the developing world.
The diseases, the medical conditions we encounter are the diseases of poverty, abject poverty. Much of what we address would not be there if it weren't for the level of poverty in these nations.
The millions of people who either physically or financially do not have access to health care are staggering. People say to me, well, there's all these millions. How do you think you can change that? We can change the individuals one life at a time.
We just see people that need help. You realise that they have no way of getting help, and I want them to know that they're loved.
Love is a language that doesn't need words all the time. You can show compassion and care for them. We are volunteers, and I think that's part of what makes it beautiful. The people come here with just a heart to serve and a heart to make a difference, and so that makes it a great environment.
See a bit more?
After the rejection and the ridicule and the hard lives that they've had up until this point, then to have a ward full of nurses and the other ship staff, people just pour out so much love on them. Love does make a difference.
Every single patient that comes in here does come away with not only physical healing but also emotional and spiritual healing as well.
What happens in their hearts is really what changes them, and that's what I think empowers them to go home and be people and to get jobs and to go to school and to believe in themselves.
This is really the setting that Mercy Ships fits into.
Bringing this hospital ship in, which is a state-of-the-art platform, surgeons, nurses, professionals from all over the world, offering this free of charge at the highest standards is unique.
We're working hard here to leave a legacy of improved healthcare.
We can stand in the gap while we encourage the development of the healthcare systems in the nations in which we serve.
Mercy Ship gets very much the concept of training. We're always trying to do ourselves out of a job. That's perfect, really, because they've got the skills, they kind of get the program. That's kind of the aim, really.
We want the day to come when all the nations on earth are able to care for their people, and we have a long ways to go, especially as we're serving in some of the poorest nations in the world.
So that's kind of an overview of the ministry. It started 40 years ago with Don Stevens. You saw him. He was the founder, the white-haired guy that said it's a disease of poverty. And he had the vision that he wanted to bring first world health care to the poorest of the poor. And he realized or found out that 50 to 75% of those people live within 100 miles of a port city. Well, you can't just go there and do surgery, and 30% of the devastating diseases and so forth that they have are surgical in nature. But you can't just go into a place and do surgeries because the infrastructure isn't there. So he got the bright idea of, let's put it on a ship. We can bring our infrastructure with us. We can give the top type of surgery to people who otherwise would not get it. So what happens is he did, over a period of time, outfit a couple of ships. We now have this one ship, the Africa Mercy. Another ship is under construction. And this ship goes for 10 months to a port in Africa, in Western Africa, and does surgeries. And then it goes to shipyard for 2 months to get fixed up and get everything up to snuff again, and then they go to the next port for 10 months. And we go from port to port. We are always there at the invitation of the government, and so it's a cooperative thing between the government and Mercy Ships. Let's see. Okay, so let me talk a little about the ship. It houses 450 volunteers. And you think, my goodness, that's a lot of people. Well, it is. Would you, yeah, slide one. That is one of the pictures of our crew at one point. If you look for me, I'm kind of over on the far side, in the back, the white hair back there. You can see I'm a small part of a large thing. So it has a crew of about 450. It has 8 operating rooms, about 78 hospital beds. So the patients come to us, they get screened, they get chosen for surgery, they given a surgery date, they come for surgery. Our surgeons come for anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 years. The guy you saw in the video, the surgeon that you saw talking several times, has been there 30 years. Is Gary Parker. He's the bedrock of the place in many ways. They get their surgery. They stay on the ship. You saw some of the wards there where they stay until they're well enough to leave the ship. Often they still need some physical therapy, occupational therapy, dressing changes, various things. So we always establish a Hope House on land. We refurbish a building, and they can stay there and come back to the ship for their treatments as long as they need them, and then they go home. So a ship of that size with that kind of an operation, it's kind of like a small village because you've got a hospital. So you've got nurses and doctors and physical therapists and x-ray technicians and all those kind of people. But it's also a ship. So you got to have mariners and deckhands and all the kinds of people that know how to run a ship. It's also a village. You've got 450 people living there. So you have to have electricians, plumbers, a bank, all that kind of stuff. And it's really, it's a hotel in that everybody's kind of living there, and you got to feed them all. So you're preparing from 400 to 800 meals a day, because we also feed the day crew, so 1 meal a day. So, I mean, a meal, so 3 times that. Some of these people have families that they bring, like Dr. Gary. Some of them have families, and so we have children on the ship, about 50 children. So we have a school, K through 12. And, you know, it's an accredited school. You might only have 3 kids in your class. I think it would be a dream for a teacher. It's a very complex organization because there's a lot going on. And so you've got to have all your administrators, you've got to have HR, you've got to have all that kind of stuff. And as I said, we're working in cooperation with governments, so you have to have your government liaisons and people who speak to them and work things out and write contracts and do whatever they do. And so what you saw examples of the kinds of surgery we did, though they didn't really emphasize it. We do 5 or 6 different kinds of surgery. One of the main ones is maxillofacial. That's what Dr. Gary that you saw specializes in and has been developed these procedures. Anything from cleft lips, cleft palates to major facial tumors, which are often due to the teeth. Problems that wouldn't happen here. The dentist would just flick it off and that would be that. But when you have no health care, they can get very large and can be quite the problem. We do plastic surgery. That means these people often cook on open fires, and their children sometimes fall in and get burned, and then they get burn contractures and lose the use of an arm or a neck or whatever. And so if you can go in and do plastic surgery and release that, you can give them back function. It's not for beauty, it's for function. Orthopedic, for children, straightening legs, windswept legs, and you know, things that happen because of lack of diet and so forth. So we do that. Ooh, ouch. General surgery, often it is goiters. Their diet, they get huge goiters, and they can be huge goiters. And getting those off and getting them stabilized, it can be quite a job. Fistula repair. Women often given birth at a very young age before their bodies are ready, and the baby gets stuck, and they don't get any health care. And so 3 or 5 days later, they finally give birth to a dead baby, but in the process, it's wrecked up their body, and now they leak urine or stool, and they're social outcasts, and they have no way to get that fixed until we come and we fix it, and they get to go back to having life. Cataract surgery, that's the one I've been involved in most. These people, they live in a tropical place, and they live outdoors, so a lot of sunshine. And they develop cataracts. And sometimes the kids develop cataracts too, either from genetics or from diet or from disease, whatever. So we do some children, but it's mostly adults with cataract surgery. We also have quite a dentistry program. Mostly pulling teeth or filling teeth, not the fancy stuff you might get here, but the basics, get them out of pain kind of thing. A huge number of people go through that program as well. So one of the things, though, the emphasis here is not just to offer these surgeries, but to try to build up the nations that we're in and build their infrastructure. So the old adage, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. So we spend a fair amount of effort trying to train local people, local surgeons, local nurses, local anesthetists, local sterilizers, local hospital administrators on how to do things, whatever. And so there's a fair amount of effort spent trying to build up the nations that we serve. So what's it like to volunteer there? What is life like? Volunteers come from anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 years. Most of them come for a few months. 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, and then go home again. We come from 40 different nations. Speaking English is a requisite to be on the ship because we have to have a common language, but for many of them, it's a second language or a third language, but they're good enough to operate in that so that they can come. So we're from many cultures. We're from many denominations and backgrounds. Most of the volunteers are Christian, not all. You don't have to be a Christian to volunteer, but you do have to adhere to the behavior codes, and there are many people willing to do that. The volunteers all pay their own expenses, so they have to fundraise or do whatever they have to do to pay for their room and board. So we actually not just volunteer, but we pay for the privilege of volunteering there. You live in a small cabin with bunk beds, maybe 4 or 6, 8 or 10 people in a cabin, so it's pretty crowded. But there are public spaces that you can mix and mingle and so forth. You're not confined to your bedroom in there. So it's Western living, but it's rather more cramped than a college dorm or something. It would be rather more cramped than that. But can you imagine this for a business model? Okay, you've got an orchestra. You're playing Beethoven's Sixth Symphony or something. And so you've got first violins, you've got second violins, and you've got violas and cellos and winds and drums and, whatever you've got. And this is a professional orchestra, and this is a good performance. And 3 measures in, your first violinist gets up and walks off. And another one comes in, sits down, continues to play, and then a cellist walks off, and another one comes on, and this goes on the whole time. And not only that, you're not paying these professionals to do this. They're just coming and doing this. You couldn't run a business that way. Not really. The reason it works with Mercy, it's really kind of incredible to think that you have these volunteers coming and going 2 weeks, 4 months, whatever, from 40 nations, doing this complex interactive business, paying for the privilege. And you have to have every role has to be filled or the thing comes to a halt. You don't have an x-ray technician, you can't do it. You have to have each one of them, each role filled by somebody all of the time for this thing to work. It's an incredible business model. Why would it work? It works because the Lord is in it. he's put this together from the very beginning. There's some amazing stories from the beginning of Mercy Ships that how the Lord was in it, getting this off the ground, and you see it every day when you're there. It's just incredible to see the Lord at work there, and that's part of why it's so addictive. Whoa, okay. 4 or 5, I forget about that. It's addictive. Did I say it was addictive? Okay. You get some rewards for being there. You get to be part of an excellent community, a marvelous community, because you have a shared vision and you're all working toward the same goal. So you're foxhole buddies. You have a sense of purpose. You get to partner with God in doing this, and he's at work and he lets you play with him. It's just marvelous. And you get to share joy because these patients are so incredibly thankful. Okay, I wanted to do at least one story and then maybe the final video. Well, I would like to show which picture is it? Would you show the Hallelujah Man? Okay, well, okay, I could do, yeah, him. Just show him. This was one of the first patients in Congo, and he had eye surgery. And he was profoundly blind, and when they finish surgery, they go out with a patch on their eye, and the next day they come back, and we take the patch off and examine them and make sure everything's fine. Well, this guy, when we took that patch off, he just jumped up and started shouting, "Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah," and went around hugging people, and he was so excited. And that's the kind of joy we get to share. And so that's part of the reward of being in this business. I'll tell you one story, and then I'm going to show the last video. The one story, any large organization that's trying to do quality work is going to have standards, and they're going to have rules, and they're going to get a little bit anal about them sometimes. And in Congo, people in Africa tend to have extraordinarily high blood pressures. Now, if the blood pressure is too high, when you try to do surgery, you can cause a bleed, and then you've really wrecked up their eye. So you don't want to do that. So it needs to not be too high. Now, normal is like 120/60 or 70, something like that. Well, it's not uncommon to see somebody with 280/150. And they're walking around. But they put in a rule, it had to be no more than 210/110, which is pretty generous, but not for there. So we'd get people coming, and their blood pressure was too high, and we'd say, "Go get medicine, come back." And they'd come back, and even on the day of surgery, in Congo they were pretty strict about that, and on the day of surgery they would come, and 2 or 3 a day would have blood pressures too high. And we would say, "Well, just sit here on the bench and, take a chill pill, maybe a nap, sing a song, do whatever and we'll check it again later." And I was kind of frustrated by this rule, but I would check them, and after a couple weeks or months, I realized, you know what? We haven't had to turn a single one away. In fact, every time we have one that's too high, it comes down to 210/108, 208/110, 210/110. I mean, right to the wire every time. And I thought, hey, wait a minute, this is not coincidence. This is the Lord saying, I think it's a stupid rule too, but I can live with it. And he just, very quietly, no big fanfare, but day after day, he was seeing to it that these people got their surgery. And so that's what I mean when I say you can see the Lord at work here. He is very involved in this ministry. I'm quitting now. So would you show the video number 2?
Wow, so many extraordinary things happening in the world, aren't there? Okay, my next, I'm going to introduce Tina Buskirk, and Tina is from Greenleaf. She's a lifelong friend of Micah Lehman, who is married to Zoran Kavezdik, and they're presently serving in Bosnia. Micah grew up in Greenleaf, and Micah and her husband Zoran met through a master's degree program, and they're both now serving with Operation Mobilization in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Micah is the daughter of Jake and Joy Lehman of Caldwell.
Hello. So my name, like he said, is Tina, and I'm from Greenleaf. I'm a lifelong friend of Micah's. So just a little quick story. When I was in 2nd grade and she was in 6th grade, she was having a birthday party, and my sister was also in her same class. And so Micah came over to pick up my sister to go to their birthday party, and I asked, "Can I go?" And Micah was like, "No, I don't want the little girl to come with us." And her mom's like, "Yeah, come along." So I got to go to the birthday party and crash the 6th graders' birthday party. Except I think I was just happy to go. I hung out with Joy the whole time. So that we kind of still tell that story. Tina tagged along. Well, here I am tagging along again, standing in the place of Micah and Zoran. They actually were here in the winter from December to about February. And so they got to share with us what's going on in Bosnia. A couple of Octobers ago, my friend Kim and I from Greenleaf went over to visit Micah and Zoran in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Micah and Zoran live in the southern part of Herzegovina, part of Bosnia. So they kind of separated a little bit. The northern part's a little more Bosnia, the southern part's more Herzegovina. That's why it's known as Bosnia-Herzegovina. So it's the double whammy there. So one of the things about Mike and Zoran, if you've never met them, they're a fun couple. They're very hilarious. They've got multiple talents, and they've got a growing family. So they have 3 little girls, and they have a boy arriving in June. So their families just stair-step down, and so I think this is their last child. And so one of the things about the time they've been in Bosnia, which has been about 7 years now, Micah has served with Operation Mobilization for 12 years. She started in Albania, went north to Montenegro, and then went north to Bosnia. So like Ken spoke, she met her husband over there, and they married, and they moved to Bosnia. They really felt like the Lord was calling them to settle down, be in a place, and build relationships. And so they've been there for 7 years. One of their verses is 2 Timothy 2:1-2, which talks about teach the things we have learned in Christ to others who will teach others. So they're part of that church planning. There is a small group of Protestants in Bosnia, but kind of like Russia, there's 3 different people groups in Bosnia. You have the Serbians, you have the Croatians, and you have the Bosniaks, which come back from the Ottoman Empire, so they're more of the Muslims that live in that country. And so with that, culturally, you have a religion that you associate with, but not necessarily do you believe, but that is part of who you culturally are. So Micah and Zoran are kind of on the margins. They are Protestants in a sense. And so they're just trying to build relationships, to be honest with people, just so people can see how they live. They're intentional every day. So part of Zoran's ministry right now is he teaches dance to younger couples, to older couples, whoever comes, and he tries to build those relationships with those couples. Part of his degree is he's wanting to do a lot of premarital counseling and marital counseling, which isn't something that's big over there. So he's kind of in those first steps of making that way. And so one of those things he finds is that there's a young group of people who are coming to this dance to learn and to socialize, and this is an opportunity for him to just talk with them about relationships and about what, they see their relationships like. Because over there, kind of like America, you live with each other for a long time until you ever get married. So it's kind of that opportunity he's looking at doing. So actually, Zoran is stepping into full-time ministry with Operation Mobilization at this point in time. They felt the Lord's call on that, because originally it was Micah who was mainly with OM, and now Zoran is joining her in that. Micah, she works with Operation Mobilization in preparing those who are coming into the Balkans, so other missionaries from other cultures. She sets up times for them to be trained and different things throughout the year to bring them all together and to meet up with one another all in that area of Bosnia. I'm going to go ahead and show you the first video so you can kind of get connected with Micah and Zoran and their family and their heart's call in Bosnia.
Where you go, I go, you say, I say, and what you pray, I pray, and what you pray, I pray. Where you go, I go, you say, I say, and what you pray, I pray, and what you pray, I pray. Where you go, I go, what you say, I say, God, and what you pray, I pray. Cause Jesus only did what he saw you do, and he would only say what he heard you speak, and he would only move when he felt you lead, following your heart, following your spirit. So how could I expect to walk without you, when every move that Jesus made was in surrender? I will not begin to live without you, for you alone are worthy, and you are always good. Where you go, I go, you say, I say, God, and what you pray, I pray, and what you pray, I pray. And where you go, I go, what you say, I say, God,
Oh God of endless mercy, God of unrelenting love, rescue every daughter, bring us back the wayward son, and by your spirit breathe upon them, show the world that you alone could save, you alone could save, as we call out to dry bones, come alive, come alive, and we call out to dead hearts, come alive, come alive, and up out of the ashes let us see an army rise. We call out to dry bones, come alive, yeah. So breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe, breath of God, breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe, oh breathe, breath of God, now breathe, oh
I dok spavam srce budno je, vas koji volim tu je sad, vapaj taj dira me, prava i jedina ljubavi, I dok spavam srce budno je, vas koji volim tu jesam. Vapaj taj dira me, prava i jedina ljubavi.
So as you can see in that video, part of them going to the city where they chose to live, the Lord provided a home. And part of that is to do ministry through, to be hospitable, to build those relationships with people. Having the 3 little girls, Micah says, you know, they just walk around and see who they're going to meet that day and what relationships they're going to build. Micah and Zoran are very intentional about every moment, seeing what the Lord's going to do and how to build those relationships. And so part of what they also do is, through their ministry, is called a discipleship making movement. And it's a process to where you invite people in your home to read scripture, and you allow the Lord to move through the scripture. You ask a lot of questions, like, what's the Lord doing in your life this week? You know, there's certain things that they do where you allow the Lord to teach, but at the same time there's accountability, but at the same time it also opens up that if somebody is more Catholic, they're not feeling like, oh, I can't be Catholic. I can't say this prayer that means a lot to me. You know, they're able to share those things, and through that, they've built few relationships with people who come to their home every Sunday, and they sing worship songs in Serbian, and they just sit and see what the Lord's doing in people's lives. And so having that home has been a blessing for them. And so one of the things, like I said before, they're moving into is that Zoran is going to be part of Operation Mobilization now. And so they are looking for prayer support and financial support. But then one of the things with the prayer support is they're calling us as well to be a part of a prayer ministry, to pray for Bosnia. Get a group of 3 people, and once a month you get together for an hour and you pray and you focus praying for Bosnia and to see the Lord move. So they're calling to a prayer movement. And so in the back when we go, there's a sign-up sheet for you can receive emails, you can receive those kind of things, but you can also be a part of this prayer team where they're calling all of us to pray for Bosnia so that we can see the hand of the Lord move mightier than when we're not praying. So I will also show that video.
For centuries, the gates of hell have bound generation after generation of Bosnians. They have been invaded, crusaded, rejected, renounced, crushed down, and as history advances, thousands upon thousands are living and dying, never encountering Jesus personally, the one who is the door, the only door through which sinners enter God's kingdom. Today, through extraordinary prayer, saints invade enemy territory. The church will prevail against the gates of hell that have closed Bosnia. The true door will be made known. As prayer warriors battle on their knees, as saints lock arms in groups of 2 or 3, as intercessors rise early, as the global church strategically prays as never before, the gates of hell will splinter, and Bosnians will joyfully run to freedom in Christ. These are just a few of the millions of captives who live in Bosnia. Where's the church? There's never been a church multiplication movement apart from extraordinary prayer. Will you join us in assaulting the gates of hell? Oh God, we ask that Bosnians would hear Jesus knocking on the door of their hearts. May they respond and shatter the stronghold of the enemy. His strongholds in Bosnia will be torn down as believers cry out to God on behalf of the millions of souls who have yet to meet Jesus. We believe in faith that breakthrough will come and is coming. Prayer changes. It changes the spiritual atmosphere in a land where darkness has reigned for so long. But prayer also changes the prayer. As you stand in the gap for the multitudes, you have the incredible opportunity to align yourself with the God who desires a bride from every tribe, tongue, and nation. As you seek his heart for Bosnia, you invest in eternal things and set your heart on heaven and God's kingdom agenda. Your walk with him is deepened. Your faith is strengthened as God proves his faithfulness. Pray for Bosnia seeks to empower and educate the global church on how to strategically pray for a church multiplication movement in Bosnia. Pray for Bosnia also invites the global church to engage in Bosnia in new ways. Every time you Pray for Bosnia on Facebook, you invite others to join you in prayer. When you follow Pray for Bosnia on Twitter, you play a part in mobilization. When you start a small prayer group to pray specifically for Bosnia, not only will you make a difference in Bosnia, but you will also find a great blessing. Pray as never before.
Well, thank you for letting me share. If you do have more questions, please come and find me.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our presentations for this evening. We have some time of fellowship in the fellowship hall, which is down this hall to the right, and down the first hall after that to the right into the big hall.